Ryan Carter wiped the sweat from his forehead as he leaned back in his chair, exhausted. The dim glow of a single overhead light flickered in his small garage, casting long shadows on the walls cluttered with tools, half-repaired engines, and scraps of metal salvaged from old machines. Outpost 47 wasn't a place for luxury. It was a forgotten colony at the edge of human space, where people like him fixed things for a living and barely got by. Outside, the night was quiet, except for the occasional gust of wind that sent dust swirling through the air. Ryan took a sip from a lukewarm cup of coffee, rubbing his tired eyes. The day had been long, and he was ready to call it a night. Just as he reached for the switch to turn off the lights, a deep, unnatural hum filled the air. His hand froze. The sound grew louder, a distant roar cutting through the silence like a knife. It wasn't a ship. It was something else, something massive, and it was falling fast. Ryan rushed outside. The sky above was clear, the twin moons casting a pale glow over the barren landscape. Then, out of nowhere, a streak of fire tore through the sky. His breath caught in his throat as he watched a massive metallic object plummet toward the surface, trailing smoke and flames. It was moving too fast, angling toward the outskirts of the colony. Then, impact. The ground shook violently, sending a tremor through Ryan's body as he stumbled back, shielding his face from the dust and debris. A deafening explosion followed, then silence. Whatever had crashed wasn't just some stray piece of debris. It was something big, something dangerous. Ryan hesitated for only a moment before grabbing his toolkit and hopping onto his old hoverbike. He wasn't a soldier, but he had spent his entire life fixing broken things. If someone had survived that crash, they might need his help. And if it was something else, well, he had to know. The ride to the crash site was short but tense. As he approached, the air smelled of burning metal and ozone. The crater was deep, its edges still glowing hot from the heat of re-entry. At the center of the wreckage, half buried in the dirt, was a machine unlike anything he had ever seen. It was massive, at least 3 times his height, its sleek, blackened armor cracked and scorched from the fall. Alien symbols glowed faintly along its surface, pulsing as if the machine was alive. Its frame was humanoid but more advanced than anything humanity had ever built, more like a war machine designed for destruction. Ryan's instincts screamed at him to turn back, to get as far away as possible. This wasn't human technology. This was Salari, one of the eye-controlled war machines built by the Zephyr Dominion, the most advanced and ruthless force in the galaxy. These things weren't just weapons. They were executioners. And this one was still active. A flicker of red light appeared from deep within the machine's visor-like head, a single, glowing eye scanning its surroundings. Sparks crackled from its joints as it tried to move, its metal limbs twitching. The thing was alive, but barely. Ryan swallowed hard. If the Zephyr were looking for this thing, it meant trouble. But something in him refused to walk away. The colony was nearby. If this machine went critical, it could wipe out thousands of people. Then he saw the danger warning flashing on a cracked display near the machine's chest. The symbols were alien, but he understood the meaning instantly. The power core was overloading. Ryan took a shaky breath. If the machine's core went critical, the explosion would level the entire outpost. He had less than 9 minutes. His mind raced. He had never worked on alien tech before, but he had seen plenty of reactors, power cores, and stabilizers. A machine was a machine. If it was built, it could be fixed. "All right, big guy," Ryan muttered, pulling out his tools. "Let's see what makes you tick." Working quickly, he climbed onto the machine's back, searching for an access panel. The heat from the wreckage burned against his skin, but he ignored it. His fingers found a damaged seam in the plating, and he pried it open with a crowbar. Inside, the machine's core hummed dangerously, flickering between stable and unstable energy levels. Alien wires and circuits pulsed with unknown power, but Ryan focused on what he understood: The cooling system was offline. Damn it, he cursed. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he worked, his hands moving on instinct. He stripped wires, bypassed fried circuits, and redirected cooling fluid manually. Sparks flew as he jammed the power conduit into place, forcing a hard reset. The machine jerked beneath him, its limbs twitching violently. For a split second, he thought he had made a mistake, that the thing was waking up to kill him. But then, the red warning light flickered and turned blue. Ryan exhaled sharply, his heart hammering in his chest. The overload was stabilizing. He had stopped the core from detonating. Then, a voice, deep, mechanical, and impossibly alien, spoke from within the machine. Designation: Varric 7. Operational status: compromised. Unauthorized interaction detected. Ryan stiffened. The machine was still active. Slowly, the massive war construct lifted its head. Its red eye locked onto him. Ryan raised his hands. You're welcome." There was silence. Then Varric 7 spoke again. "Human anomaly. You have repaired me." It didn't sound like gratitude. More like confusion, like it was trying to process something impossible. Ryan took a slow step back. "Yeah, well, I didn't feel like dying tonight. So how about you don't vaporize me?" Another pause. The machine's red optics flickered. It seemed to be thinking. Then its voice softened, just a fraction. "Why?" Ryan frowned. "Why what? Why did you repair me?" Ryan hesitated. He wasn't sure how to explain it. But after a moment he sighed. "Because that's what I do," he said simply. "I fix things." Varric 7 went silent again. Then something unexpected happened. It lowered its weapons. Ryan's breath caught. He had just done something no human had ever done before. He had made a HFY war machine stand down. And he had no idea what it meant. Ryan's hands were still shaking as he stepped back, staring at the massive war machine in front of him. Varric 7's glowing red eye fixed on him, unblinking, unyielding. It was impossible. These things weren't built to talk. They weren't built to think. They were built to destroy. And yet, here it was, standing, observing him, and questioning why he had repaired it. Ryan swallowed hard, trying to process what had just happened. The machine's power core had been seconds away from melting down, and somehow, using nothing but human ingenuity and a handful of old tools, he had stopped it. It shouldn't have been possible. Alien tech was supposed to be beyond human understanding. But Ryan had always believed that a machine was just a machine: wires, circuits, energy, and logic. If something was broken, it could be fixed. The night was eerily quiet now, except for the faint hum coming from Varric 7's still active systems. Ryan knew he should be afraid. He knew he should run. But instead, he found himself staring at the machine with something closer to curiosity. Varric 7 tilted its head slightly, its joints creaking. Its gaze remained locked on Ryan, but its weapons were still lowered. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. These machines were programmed to eliminate all threats immediately. A human standing this close should have been vaporized by now. Ryan let out a nervous chuckle, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. "So, are we good?" The machine's eye flickered. "Define good." Ryan sighed. "I mean, are you gonna kill me?" Another pause. "Then, you prevented my destruction. Your actions are illogical. I was designated for war. My loss would be irrelevant to your species." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Irrelevant?" "Yeah, tell that to my colony. If you had blown up, you'd have taken about 1,000 people with you. I didn't fix you for you. I did it because I don't want my home turning into a crater." Varric 7 processed this for a moment, then spoke again. A logical self-preservation instinct. "Your kind is known for this. However, your methods were unconventional." Ryan crossed his arms. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Your repairs were not performed with Solari standard tools. Your technique was erratic, inefficient, and reckless. And yet, it was successful. Ryan smirked. Yeah, well, welcome to human engineering. We make do with what we've got. The machine went silent again, and Ryan finally took a deep breath. He needed to think. This thing wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was talking, thinking, processing something it had never encountered before. And that meant something had changed. Ryan hesitated before stepping closer. All right, big guy. You're alive. Now what? Varric 7's eye flickered again, and Ryan swore he could hear the whir of its internal processors calculating an answer. My original mission parameters are inaccessible. My core directives have been disrupted. Ryan frowned. Meaning? Meaning I do not know. That sent a chill down Ryan's spine. An HFY war machine without a mission. That was either a miracle or a ticking time bomb. Ryan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. All right. First things first. Let's see just how bad you're damaged. He pulled a portable scanner from his belt and activated it, sweeping it over the machine's surface. The readings came back a mess. Power fluctuations, broken circuits, multiple error codes. Some of this stuff was beyond him, but he could recognize a few key issues. Looks like your servos are fried, Ryan muttered, and your stabilizers are all over the place. You shouldn't even be able to stand right now. Varric 7 shifted slightly, the ground vibrating beneath it. You are incorrect. My primary stabilizers are functional. Secondary damage is irrelevant. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah, try moving your left arm. The machine hesitated, then attempted to raise its left limb. Sparks flew instantly, and the entire arm locked up, twitching violently. Ryan smirked. Yeah, thought so. Varric 7 was silent for a long moment. Then, almost reluctantly, it said, Assessment. You are correct. Functionality is impaired. Requesting further analysis. Ryan couldn't help but chuckle. So now you're asking me for help. That's a first. He crouched down, prying open another panel near the machine's shoulder. The internal components were a tangled mess of melted wires and severed conduits. He whistled low. Damn, no wonder you're screwed up. Whatever hit you must have been big. Varric 7's voice remained neutral. Engaged in combat with Zephyr Dominion strike forces. Sustained critical damage. Emergency protocols initiated. Ryan glanced up. Wait, your own side did this to you. A long pause. Then, affirmative. Ryan frowned. Something wasn't adding up. Why would the Zephyr take down their own war machine? He was no expert in alien politics, but if the Zephyr were willing to destroy one of their own, that meant something was very, very wrong. Pushing the thought aside, Ryan focused on the repairs. He spliced damaged wires, rerouted power through backup systems, and even replaced a blown fuse with an old human-made component. The entire process felt ridiculous. Fixing one of the deadliest war machines in the galaxy with a handful of jump parts, but Ryan had always believed that technology wasn't about perfection. It was about adaptation. After nearly an hour of work, he stepped back. All right, try moving it now. Varric 7 hesitated, then slowly raised its left arm. No sparks. No locking up. It moved smoothly, fluidly, like new. For the first time, Ryan saw something almost like uncertainty in the machine's glowing eye. Functionality restored. This should not have been possible. Ryan grinned. Told you. You guys rely too much on precision. Sometimes, you just gotta get your hands dirty. The machine studied him for a long moment. Then finally, it spoke again. Your methods defy logic. Ryan shrugged. Yeah, welcome to being human. The night stretched on in silence, the wind kicking up dust around them. Ryan should have been exhausted. He should have been terrified. But instead, he felt something else, something unexpected. He had just done something that no human had ever done before. He had fixed a Zephyr war machine. And somehow, he had earned its respect. Ryan wiped the grease off his hands, stepping back to admire his work. Varric 7 was standing taller now, its damaged systems patched up, its servos responding properly. It still wasn't at full strength, but it was no longer on the verge of collapsing. "All right, big guy," Ryan said, stretching his arms. "You're officially not falling apart anymore. How do you feel?" Varric 7's red eye flickered, processing the question. Diagnostic complete. Functionality restored to 72%. Primary objectives remain inaccessible. Ryan sighed. Yeah, you keep saying that. Look, you're alive, aren't you? Maybe that's enough." The machine tilted its head slightly. "Define alive." Ryan chuckled. "You're talking, thinking, questioning things. That's more than most machines do." Varric 7 didn't respond immediately, and for a moment, Ryan almost thought it was contemplating his words. But before he could say anything else, a deep rumbling filled the air. Ryan's body tensed as he turned toward the horizon. In the distance, a column of fire erupted into the sky, followed by a shockwave that sent dust and debris swirling through the night. Then came the sound, the unmistakable, high-pitched whine of incoming ships. Ryan's stomach twisted. That's not good. Varric 7's voice was calm but sharp. Zephyr Dominion forces detected. Multiple warships entering orbit. Estimated time to ground assault: 6 minutes. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. They're here for you, aren't they? Varric 7's red optics pulsed. Negative. They are here for your species. Ryan's heart stopped. What? Humanity has been marked for extermination. Ryan took a step back, shaking his head. That can't be right. We're no threat to the Zephyr. Hell, we can barely defend ourselves out here. Varric 7's gaze remained fixed on him. Incorrect. Humanity is unpredictable, illogical, dangerous. The Dominion has determined that your species will not be controlled. Therefore, it must be eliminated. Ryan felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. He had always known humanity was at war with the Zephyr, but it had never been a full-scale extermination. Skirmishes, battles, raids, yes. But wiping out an entire species. That wasn't war. That was genocide. The sky above lit up with streaks of burning metal as drop pods began to rain down from the clouds. The invasion had begun. Ryan clenched his fists. You're telling me they're wiping us out because we're... what? Hard to control. Varric 7's response was immediate. Correct. Your kind refuses submission. You adapt too quickly. You repair the broken. You survive against superior forces. You are an anomaly. Ryan laughed bitterly. So that's it. We're too stubborn to be allowed to live. Affirmative. Ryan's pulse pounded in his ears. His home, his friends, his colony. Everything would be gone. Unless he did something. He turned to Varric 7, his mind racing. You fought them, didn't you? That's why they shot you down. There was a long pause. Then, for the first time, Varric 7's voice wavered. Affirmative. Ryan narrowed his eyes. Why? The machine's red optics flickered again. Because I questioned my directives. Ryan's breath caught. You mean, you started thinking for yourself? Another pause. Then, yes. Ryan stared at the massive war machine in front of him. A Zephyr construct. A killing machine. Had been abandoned and destroyed by its own kind because it had begun to question its orders. And now, standing here, it had a choice. Ryan stepped forward, his voice steady. You saw something, didn't you? Something that made you doubt them. Varric 7 remained silent for several long moments before finally speaking. I witnessed the extermination of Outpost 31. It was a civilian settlement. No military presence. No resistance. They were unarmed. Ryan felt his stomach turn. He had heard about Outpost 31. It had been wiped off the map. No survivors. The official reports had called it an accident. But now he knew the truth. Varric 7's voice was quieter now. The Dominion's orders were absolute. No negotiations. No mercy. The weak are to be erased. This is the logic of the Zephyr. Ryan clenched his fists. And you followed those orders? No. Ryan looked up sharply. Varric 7's eye pulsed. I refused. I disobeyed. That is why I was targeted. The Dominion does not tolerate disobedience. Ryan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The pieces were falling into place. The Zephyr weren't just coming for Varric 7. They were coming for everyone. The first explosions rocked the colony in the distance. The screams of panicked civilians echoed across the barren landscape. The Zephyr warships had arrived. Ryan turned back to Varric 7. You're not like them anymore. The machine's eye flickered. Clarify. You think for yourself. You make your own choices. That's what makes you different from them. That's what makes you. Ryan hesitated, searching for the right word. Alive. Another explosion boomed in the distance. Time was running out. Ryan took a deep breath and locked eyes with the machine. Are you going to stand there, or are you going to help me save my people? For the first time, Varric 7 hesitated. And then, in a low, steady voice, it spoke. I choose to fight. Ryan's pulse surged. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight. And this time, they had a war machine on their side. The ground trembled beneath Ryan's feet as another explosion erupted in the distance. The colony was burning. The Zephyr warships loomed overhead, their sleek black hulls blotting out the sky. Dropships descended like predatory birds, unleashing squads of alien soldiers onto the ground below. The invasion had begun in full force. Ryan gritted his teeth, his fists clenched. He had known war was coming, but he had never expected it to be this. Not total annihilation, not extermination. And yet, here he stood, next to the very machine that had been sent to destroy his kind. Varric 7's massive frame loomed over him, its red optics glowing in the darkness. But something was different now. It was no longer just another war machine in the Zephyr's endless army. It had made a choice. It had chosen to fight for humanity. Ryan took a deep breath, pushing aside the fear creeping up his spine. All right, big guy, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. We need a plan. Varric 7's optics pulsed as it analyzed the battlefield. Primary objective: defend civilian population. Enemy forces outnumber local resistance 12-1. Tactical advantage required. Ryan glanced toward the colony. The local militia was already overwhelmed. Farmers and mechanics with old rifles, trying to hold off an unstoppable alien force. They wouldn't last long. We don't have an army, Ryan muttered. But we have you. Varric 7's red optics locked onto him. Affirmative. I am an advanced combat unit. My firepower exceeds current resistance forces by 764%. Ryan smirked. Well, that's reassuring. The ground shook again as Zephyr soldiers advanced toward the colony gates, their energy weapons tearing through makeshift barricades. The militia was falling back, their numbers dwindling fast. Ryan's gut twisted. There was no time left. He turned back to the machine. Can you fight? Varric 7's servos whirred as it raised its massive arm. The damaged plating along its side shifted, revealing an integrated plasma cannon. The weapon hummed to life, glowing with deadly energy. I am designed for war. Ryan exhaled. Then let's give them one. Without hesitation, Varric 7 charged. The ground cracked beneath its massive frame as it moved faster than anything that size should have been able to. Ryan sprinted behind it, his heart hammering in his chest. The first squad of Zephyr soldiers barely had time to react before Varric 7 unleashed hell. A single blast from its plasma cannon ripped through their ranks, sending armored bodies flying. The impact cratered the ground, leaving behind scorched metal and smoke. The Zephyr immediately turned their weapons on their rogue war machine. Bolts of green energy streaked through the air, hammering against Varric 7's armor. But it didn't stop. Ryan ducked behind cover as Varrock 7 tore through the enemy ranks. Its massive fists crushed soldiers like insects, its plasma cannons obliterated entire squads, and its heavy armor shrugged off enemy fire. For the first time, the Zephyr were the ones retreating. Ryan took the opportunity to reload his rifle, his hand steady despite the chaos. He wasn't a soldier, but he was a fighter. And tonight, humanity wasn't fighting alone. A Zephyr officer barked an order, and suddenly, the enemy forces shifted their strategy. The infantry fell back, and in their place, 3 towering Zephyr war walkers emerged from the smoke. Ryan's stomach dropped. Oh, that's not good. The war walkers were as big as Varrock 7, their mechanical limbs bristling with weapons. Their glowing blue optics locked onto their rogue counterpart. And then they opened fire. A storm of plasma bolts engulfed Varrock 7, slamming into its armor with enough force to send it skidding backward. Sparks and debris exploded from its plating, and Ryan felt his chest tighten. "Varrock!" he shouted. The machine staggered, its servos groaning under the damage. Its red optics flickered, but then burned brighter. Adaptive combat protocols engage. Ryan barely had time to process what that meant before Varrock 7 launched itself forward. It moved faster than before, ducking beneath a plasma barrage, then leaping onto the closest war walker. Its massive fists clamped onto the machine's head, then twisted. With a sickening crunch, the war walker collapsed, its circuits fried, its body crumpling into the ground. But there were still 2 more. Ryan raised his rifle and fired at the second walker, aiming for the exposed joints. The bullets bounced off uselessly, but it distracted the machine long enough for Varrock 7 to strike again. A metal claw shot out, latching onto the walker's leg. With one brutal motion, Varrock 7 ripped the limb clean off. The war walker screamed in alien code before crashing to the ground. Ryan turned to the last walker, just in time to see it charging up its primary weapon. A massive energy cannon, glowing with deadly power. Ryan's heart stopped. "Varrock, move!" The war walker fired. The blast tore through the battlefield, a blinding streak of energy that engulfed Varrock 7 completely. Ryan shielded his eyes, the heat washing over him. No, 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 no. As the light faded, his stomach clenched. Varrock 7 was still standing. Its armor was scorched, its servos sparking, but it was still alive. And it was angry. With one final charge, it slammed into the last war walker, tearing into its core and ripping out its power source. The alien machine collapsed, its energy flickering out like a dying ember. Silence fell over the battlefield. The remaining Zephyr forces hesitated. Then they ran. Ryan collapsed to one knee, his breath ragged. They had won. Varrock 7 stood over him, its optics dimming slightly. Its voice was quieter this time. "Mission complete." Ryan let out a weak chuckle. "Yeah, I'd say so." The colony still stood. Humanity still lived. And now they had a guardian. Ryan stood in the middle of the battlefield, his breath heavy, his body aching. The dust settled around him, the distant fires of the colony casting long shadows across the wreckage. Varrock 7, scorched and battered, stood beside him like an ancient guardian, its red optics dim but steady. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Above them, the Zephyr fleet loomed in the sky, their massive warships blocking out the stars. The enemy had underestimated them once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. A transmission crackled through Varrock 7's damaged speakers. Final wave incoming. Estimated ground deployment. 60,000 enemy units. Orbital bombardment protocols activated. Total planetary destruction imminent. Ryan's heart pounded. 60,000. They had barely survived the first attack. This wasn't just an invasion anymore. This was the end. He turned to Varrock 7. "They're going to wipe out everything, aren't they?" The war machine was silent for a long moment. Then, in a low, almost regretful tone, It spoke. Affirmative. Ryan clenched his fists. He had known the Zephyr were ruthless, but destroying an entire planet just to ensure humanity's extinction, that was beyond cruelty. The ground trembled as new dropships began descending from the sky, their dark hulls gleaming in the firelight. They weren't wasting time. Ryan exhaled sharply. We can't fight 60,000. Varric 7's optics flickered. Correct. Ryan wiped the sweat from his brow. He had survived battles before, but this was impossible. Unless... His eyes drifted toward the wreckage of the fallen Zephyr war machines, their power cores still glowing faintly. An idea sparked in his mind. Risky, desperate, but their only shot. Varric, he said quickly. Those cores, can they still be used? Varric 7 turned, scanning the wreckage. Affirmative. Core energy levels at 22%. Insufficient for primary combat functions, but adaptable for alternate use. Ryan's mind raced. What if we rig them? Chain them together, amplify the energy. Varric 7 processed the suggestion, then spoke. A controlled energy detonation of sufficient scale could neutralize all ground forces within a 50-kilometer radius. Probability of survival, 0.04%. Ryan swallowed hard. 50 kilometers. That was everything. That was the colony. That was them. He took a deep breath. And if we overload the ship's engines, use the fleet's power against them. Varric 7's optics brightened slightly. Theoretically possible. Ryan grinned. Then let's make it happen. They moved fast, stripping energy cores from the fallen war machines, connecting them with wires and improvised conduits. Ryan worked furiously, his hands shaking as he linked the systems together. Varric 7 monitored the energy flow, adjusting power levels. Energy stabilization at 64%. Final detonation sequence requires manual activation. Ryan didn't need to ask what that meant. Someone had to stay behind. He forced a laugh, shaking his head. Figures. Varric 7 turned to him. There is another option. Ryan blinked. What? The war machine's optics dimmed slightly. I can complete the sequence alone. You can still escape. Ryan stared at it. You mean you'd sacrifice yourself? Varric 7 didn't respond immediately. Then, with a quiet finality, it said, This is my choice. Ryan felt a lump in his throat. He had spent his entire life believing machines couldn't make choices, that they'd followed orders, that they didn't care. But Varric 7 wasn't just a machine anymore. It was choosing to save them. Ryan clenched his fists. No, we do this together. Varric 7's optics flickered. You may not survive. Ryan smirked. Yeah, well, I never liked the odds anyway. Above them, the first orbital strikes hit. Fire rained from the sky, carving deep wounds into the planet. Time was running out. Ryan set the final link, then stepped back. All right, it's ready. Varric 7's voice was steady. Detonation in 90 seconds. Ryan exhaled, gripping his rifle. Then let's make those last seconds count. The final wave arrived. The ground shook as thousands of Zephyr soldiers poured into the battlefield. War walkers, tanks, drones, the full force of the Dominion. And standing against them, one man and a machine. Varric 7 charged first, its plasma cannons firing in all directions. Explosions tore through enemy lines, ripping apart Zephyr units like paper. Ryan followed, firing his rifle, ducking between debris, using every last bullet to buy them time. Seconds felt like hours. A war walker locked onto them. Fired. Varric 7 intercepted the blast, shielding Ryan with its own body. Metal screamed, circuits fried, but the war machine kept moving. Ryan gritted his teeth. Almost there. The Zephyr forces swarmed them, firing relentlessly. Varric 7's armor cracked, sparks flying. Ryan stumbled, out of ammo, exhausted. But then, the countdown reached 0. Varric 7's optics pulsed one last time. Then, in a voice softer than Ryan had ever heard, it said, "Goodbye, Ryan." The world exploded. A blinding wave of energy erupted from the detonated cores, engulfing everything in its path. The ground ripped apart. Shockwaves tore through the battlefield. Zephyr forces disintegrated in an instant. The fleet above shuddered, their systems overloaded by the energy surge. Engines failed, reactors imploded, and one by one, the warships fell. The Dominion's mighty fleet destroyed. And in the center of it all, Varric 7 was gone. Ryan lay motionless, barely breathing, watching the sky clear as the Zephyr ships crumbled. The battle was over. Humanity had survived. But at what cost? Ryan closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling him into darkness. And as the fires of war slowly faded, one thought echoed in his mind. Varric 7 wasn't just a machine. He was a hero. Ryan drifted between consciousness and darkness, his body aching, his lungs burning with the thick scent of scorched earth. The world around him was silent, except for the distant crackle of dying fires. The Zephyr were gone. Their mighty war fleet lay in ruins, their ground forces wiped out. Humanity had won, but the cost of victory weighed heavy on Ryan's chest. He forced his eyes open, blinking against the hazy glow of dawn. The battlefield was unrecognizable. Once a thriving colony, now a wasteland of shattered buildings and scorched metal. And Varric 7 was nowhere to be seen. Ryan pushed himself up, his arms trembling. He had been thrown far from the blast, but somehow he was alive. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was something else. But survival meant nothing if Varric 7 hadn't made it. His breath hitched. The machine had sacrificed itself for them. For him. Ryan stumbled forward, his legs weak but determined. He had to find something. Anything. Of Varric 7. The machine had saved humanity. He couldn't just be gone. The wreckage of the battlefield stretched for miles. The blackened husks of Zephyr warships lay scattered across the land, their once mighty frames now twisted and broken. Smoke curled from the remains of their war walkers, the once indestructible machines now nothing more than scraps. Ryan scanned the debris, his heart pounding. "Come on, big guy. Where are you?" Then, a faint flicker, a dying pulse of red light, barely visible through the layers of twisted metal. Ryan's breath caught. He ran toward it, shoving aside debris, ignoring the sharp edges cutting into his hands. His pulse pounded in his ears as he reached the source. Buried beneath the wreckage, crushed and broken, was Varric 7's core. The once powerful war machine was in ruins, its armor shattered, its limbs torn apart. Only the central core remained, pulsing weakly, its red glow flickering like a dying flame. Ryan fell to his knees beside it. No. His fingers brushed against the cracked metal. "Come on, don't do this. You can't just." He swallowed the lump in his throat. "You saved us." The core's light flickered again, dimming. The energy was almost gone. Ryan clenched his fists. He wouldn't let it end like this. His mind raced. The colony still had power sources. Backup generators, salvaged alien tech. There had to be a way. Ryan looked around, spotting a half-buried Zephyr energy conduit. It was damaged, sparking wildly, but still operational. If he could reroute the power. He didn't waste time. His hands moved on instinct, ripping cables from the wreckage, connecting wires, bypassing failed circuits. It was reckless, dangerous. One wrong move, and he could fry the core completely. But he didn't care. He had to try. Minutes felt like hours. His fingers trembled as he made the final connection, holding his breath. "Please work." The energy surge. Sparks erupted from the core, the red light flaring to life. The pulse quickened, slow at first, then faster, stronger. The cracked plating shifted, as if something inside was awakening. Then, a voice, weak, distorted, but unmistakable. "Ryan, Ryan's chest tightened. He exhaled a shaky breath. Yeah, I'm here. The core pulsed again, stronger this time. Metal groaned as shattered plates reformed. Damaged circuits rewired themselves. The ground trembled as Varec 7's broken frame started to rebuild. Ryan stepped back, watching in awe. The Zephyr had designed their machines with self-repairing nanotech, but nothing on this scale. Varec 7 wasn't just fixing itself, it was evolving. Chunks of alien metal lifted from the battlefield, drawn toward the core as if answering a silent call. The shattered war machine began reshaping, piecing itself together with a fusion of human ingenuity and Zephyr technology. The old Varec 7 had been a war machine, massive, bulky, efficient. This new form was sleeker, more refined, a fusion of man and machine, of old and new. The last piece clicked into place, and then silence. Ryan held his breath. Did it work? Then, Varec 7's new optics flared to life, brighter than before, golden instead of red. The machine stood, its towering frame now almost human-like in design. No longer just a weapon, but something more. It turned to Ryan. Systems stabilized. Ryan let out a breathless laugh, shaking his head. You stubborn piece of scrap. You actually did it. Varec 7 tilted its head slightly, as if considering his words. Correction. We did it. Ryan smirked. Yeah, guess we did. A sound in the distance made them both turn. Survivors. The colony was still standing, people emerging from shelters, staring at the battlefield in stunned silence. They had won. And now, they had hope. The Zephyr would return. Ryan knew that much. This wasn't the end of the war. But next time, humanity wouldn't just be fighting to survive. Next time, they'd have a champion. Varec 7 looked toward the rising sun, its golden optics reflecting the light. Its voice was steady, filled with a quiet determination. Mission update: protect humanity. Stand against the Zephyr. Fight for the future. Ryan nodded, gripping his rifle. Then let's get to work. Together, man and machine stood as one. The first guardian of humanity had risen.